Welcome in, everyone. You're listening to Bulls Central. And as we get closer and closer to the start of the season, I figure what better way to bring on some additional guests to the channel. Today, I've got a very special one for you. Brand new guest to the show.
Mhm.
15-year NBA veteran, Chicago native, and basketball legend, really. A member of the famous Flying Illini of the late 80s. Now you know him as analyst for the Bulls pre- and post-game shows for NBC Sports Chicago. It's my pleasure to welcome to the show Kendall Gill of NBC Sports Chicago. Kendall, thanks for coming on, my man. Appreciate you making the time.
Oh, no, no problem. I appreciate you bringing me on to the show.
So, Kendall, we'll obviously talk about the Bulls this upcoming season, expectations, might even get into some predictions as well. But selfishly, where I want to start, because it's not every day I get to talk to a former player who played in the era that actually got me into basketball as a kid
Oh,
growing up in
yeah.
the 90s. So,
Uh,
where I wanted to start was actually talking about your playing days just for a little bit, if you don't mind. A lot of kids growing up in the 90s, what obviously got me into the game was Michael Jordan, the Chicago Bulls, and why I ultimately became a Bulls fan and stuck with it.
right,
Now, also, like every kid, we all have these dreams and aspirations of one day making it to the NBA. Until we get to about the age 11 or 12, and then 99% of us we realize we have no chance of ever getting there. But for you, growing up in Chicago, playing for the Illini, I know that the Bulls hadn't started winning championships yet by the time you entered into the league, and really the rise of Michael Jordan was
mhm,
just starting when you were in high school, going into college. But
right.
being from the area, what was it like for you as far as watching this team? Did you ever fantasize about one day playing for the Bulls? And I know that you eventually actually did for one season. We could talk about that as well. But in those early years, when you knew you had a future in basketball, I mean, you knew you were going to be making it to the NBA. Did you have this dream of playing in your hometown?
Uh, yeah, not until later on in my career. I was drafted fifth in 1990 draft by the Charlotte Hornets, and I actually wanted to play against the Bulls.
Oh,
Uh,
okay.
you know, for a large part of my career. But in the end, I wanted to finish it up at home. Which I
Right.
eventually did. I got an opportunity to play for the Bulls for one season, and that was great to be able to put the uniform on. And now shoot, I'm in my maybe 16th year of doing pre halftime and post game show for the Bulls. So, I guess I am a Chicago Bull now, a real one, because I've been in the family for so long. But growing up and seeing Michael come, of course, that was back in 1984. I mean, he just was a shot in the arm to this city, and I because I followed college basketball so closely when I was a kid in high school, the Michael Jordans, Lenny Bias, Adrian Branches from University of Maryland, and Roy Tarpley's from Michigan, all those guys. I followed them, so I knew exactly what Michael Jordan meant to this franchise. Most people, they knew he was good. All American coming out of North Carolina, won a national championship, but they didn't know how good he was. I did,
Right.
because I was a basketball fanatic, and when he came here, man, he just lit the city on fire. And I remember, my dad took me to his first game against the Washington Bullets,
Mm.
and I remember him going up, and Jeff Ruland, knocks him down, and he falls down awkwardly, and everybody like, oh shoot, uh, I remember that play as a kid. I was probably a junior in high school when that
Mm.
happened, and then later on the next year, I made the All City team.
Mm-hmm.
Well, not the All City team, but the All Sun Times team, which means the best players in the area, Chicagoland area, and we got an opportunity to be recognized by the Chicago Bulls, and we got a chance to walk on the Chicago Stadium floor
Mm.
at halftime. And I remember walking on the floor, and that was the first time I first encountered that close with Michael.
Mm.
You know, and I was like, yeah, I was like, I can get here one day. I can
So,
get here one. You
so
know,
what? So I got to ask them, what was it like coming to play the Bulls when you came to Chicago? Once you
oh
eventually got to the league, I mean, it would have been Chicago Stadium, then eventually United Center.
yeah,
What was it like for you coming back and playing not only in your hometown but also going up against MJ?
yeah, man, it was great because I got a chance to realize my dream. And actually that first time when I came back with the Charlotte Hornets and stepped on the stadium floor, I remember that moment when I was in high school, and I was on the floor with Michael walking by him, saying, "I'm going to be here one day." I remember that. And, my family being in the stands, seeing me for the first time, a lot of them see me for the first time in a pro uniform, going up against Michael Jordan. It was a real special moment for me. But, as time went on, I began to not see it as so much of a ceremonial thing. It was that I was there to win, and I was there to do my job, and I didn't like look at it as this fabulous thing, me playing against Michael Jordan and stuff, and Scottie Pippen and all that. I wanted to beat those guys. Didn't happen that often, but I really wanted to beat them.
I have to ask, was Michael the hardest player you ever had to guard in your career?
No. And a lot of people argue with me about, what are you talking about? Michael's not the. No, he wasn't. It was a guy, and you know this guy. His name used to be Chris Jackson, but now his name is
Mahmoud Abdul-Rauf.
Yeah, he was the hardest I've ever had to guard.
Really? Okay.
Yeah, and MJ was the second hardest. Grant Hill third. I believe Kobe Bryant Vince Carter was fourth. No, Reggie Miller was fourth because of all the picks that he went through. Kobe Bryant was Vince Carter was fifth. Kobe Bryant was sixth. And I made a list of this on my Instagram account.
Okay, I was gonna say you have it down exactly who was hardest.
Lewis,
okay,
late Reggie Lewis was seventh. Allen Iverson was eighth. Magic Johnson was ninth, and Mark Price was 10th.
Interesting. I would not have suspected Chris Jackson. I know, like you said, he eventually changed his name to Mahmoud Abdul-Rauf, but that I would not have expected it. Speaking of defense, some of you watching them might know this, but Kendall still holds an NBA record to this day.
Yeah.
Be honest, I'm not sure it'll ever be broken with how much the game has shifted.
Right. I'm knocking on wood right now.
I don't think it'll be broken with how much the game has shifted on offense. But Kendall, has the record for most steals in an NBA game, 11 steals. It's tied, I believe, but we're gonna go post ABA merger for that record. So we'll say you have it. But talk to me about that game actually real quick. And then for those listening, I promise we'll talk about the Bulls. And I just want to get what's going through your mind in that game. Were you aware you were closing in on that record, or were you just kind of doing your thing and then you realized it after the fact?
Okay, so first thing, Larry Keenan got it in the ABA. Am I correct?
I believe so. Yeah.
Okay, and I got it in NBA. Okay. Well, Walt Clyde Frazier knew I was a ball hawk. I mean, that's always been a strength of mine, still in the basketball. And he told me one time after the game, he was like, "Listen, Kendall, never go for the first 2 or 3 steals ever in a game." He's like, because you don't know when the game is tight at the end of the game, they're going to throw that same pass, and that's when you can capitalize on getting the steal. You've been laying in the weeds the whole game, and now you wait until a critical situation to get one. So during that game, I actually let the first 3 go by me.
Okay.
So I really could have had 14. But that game, it was against the Miami Heat, and the reason why I was able to get it is, one is because I'm pretty good at stealing the basketball, but another one is that Pat Riley's offense was just so predictable. It's swing, try to get the ball down in the zone. If we don't have that, Tim Hardaway will do something. Do his crossover and pull up for a 3 or try and take it all the way to the basket. But for the most part, those guys were trained to reverse the basketball. And all I did was just waited in the weeds, and I started stealing the basketball. They kept throwing it. I kept stealing it. I got a couple of steals just, picking people's pocket, but for the most part, that was the reason why, And, a lot of people don't know that about Pat Riley's offense. Even when he was with the Knicks, I mean, it was just swing, get it down to Patrick. And the best time to steal the basketball is when a big man is reversing it.
Right.
Because they are programmed to pass it. So they're not looking, they're like robots. They get the basketball and pass. Okay. So for all the tips for the young kids out there, that's really how you steal a basketball, when a big man is passing it.
Unless it's Jokic.
Yeah.
Unless it's a modern day big man. So did you realize that you were coming up on the record, or you were just, I'm just stealing the ball, and then you kind of realized it after the fact?
After I got 10. They
Yeah.
told me that you need one more. You need one more
Need
to,
one
to,
more.
to get the
Okay.
record, yeah, to tie it. And I was like, oh, okay, I'll get it. And I actually was going for the triple double
Mm,
in that too. So I got a triple double with steals, and it was a great day because that year we weren't having such a good year. The New Jersey Nets at that time. I think we just got
mm,
a new coach, and Don Casey had taken over for John Calipari, and
mm.
that was just a highlight in that year for us, and for me.
Right, right.
Yeah.
So thanks for everyone bearing with me while I got my selfish questions out of the way. Thanks
Yeah.
for that, Kendall. Let's talk about this Bulls team.
Yeah.
You've been covering this team for some time now. I think a lot of us last season. It was one of the more frustrating years in recent memory for fans to watch. More frustrating than the rebuilding team years because the Bulls actually had the talent to do well, and the expectations were obviously a lot higher. But going into this season, I feel like the expectations are just as high for Bulls fans anyway, given the fact the Bulls are running this team back. You've seen improvements from Coby White. We're all hoping that Patrick Williams is going to have a breakout year. And then the additions of Javon Carter, Torrey Craig, do our expectations, in your view, need to be dialed back a bit? And what are your expectations for the team this season?
It's ironic that you should talk about this because we actually just got done doing the preseason show at
Oh, okay.
NBC a couple hours ago. Myself and Will Purdue, but they asked us this question on air, and my expectations for them, I can see a 6, 7 seed
Mm,
uh, if they stay healthy. I think that this year will be the last year if they don't succeed for the core to stay together. If they don't have a successful season, then I think you'll see significant changes in the roster. Who knows? That may be DeMar, that may be Vuce, that may be Zach. Also, maybe Pat Will too.
sure.
Of course, we all know how talented P. Will is, and how dominant he can be when he decides to be. But just like Karnisovas and Eversley said, at the beginning of training camp, we got to see some results, guys.
Yeah.
We've invested all this time and a lot of money and patience in you guys. Now it's time for you to take the next step. The one guy that has taken the next step is Coby White.
Yeah.
He put in a lot of work over the last 2 years, learned how to become a point guard, went and made his handle better, and you can see it in his game. Just one aspect of his game made everything else more confident. Because he can handle that basketball and go wherever he wants to go. He exudes confidence. So, I think that the Bulls had a sneaky good summer in free agency and everything. Signing Torrey Craig, signing Javon Carter. They needed to shore up their 3-point shooting. Both of those guys shot 42% and 40 respectively. And we were dead last in 3-point shooting last year.
Mm-hmm.
So, one, we need to take more of them, 30, and two, we need to make them.
Right.
So they went and got two guys that are capable of doing that.
You were mentioning Patrick Williams. I did want to talk about that a little bit. Sort of breaking news just a few hours ago. Obviously, we learned that the Bulls and Pat did not reach an agreement on a rookie contract extension, whereas a lot of other rookies from that 2020 draft class did. Were you surprised at all that they didn't come to agreement to terms? And what do you think that means for Pat's overall future as he heads to become a restricted free agent this upcoming
Yeah,
summer?
no, yeah, I'm not surprised. Because I think the Bulls are still taking. Hey, listen, we got to wait and see. Because even though P. Will as the fourth option, he did average double figures. I mean, he's a good player.
Yeah.
Okay, but I think they're waiting to see him be dominant before they give him that much money.
Right.
And I think that he should take it as a motivator. He should try to be dominant all year long because I'm telling you, if he's dominant all year long, and I know we say this year after year after year, but if he is, it changes the total landscape of this team.
Yeah.
Now we are competing with the big boys if P. Will comes along.
Right.
Because when he plays the way that he's capable of playing, he's a matchup nightmare.
Yeah.
That big, that strong, that skilled, that talented. If he can just put it together, I mean, he is the if he did everything that he's capable of, he would be the best player on this team.
Sure. And in a few years, I could see that for sure. Yeah, I mean the talent
Yeah,
is there, like you said, right? I mean, and
yeah,
the two-way potential is everything. I mean, I think that's the other thing, right? Is like despite the fact that Patrick has disappointed to an extent, I'm still a big Pat believer, and I'll remain that way until it
mm,
proves otherwise. But um, players of his caliber and his skill set are paid at a premium in this league, right? And so it's like I think he's expecting a big payday, but the Bulls also want that flexibility, like you mentioned. This could be the last year, right? And so they're going to have
yeah.
to make quite a few important decisions going into the summer should things not work out. And I think that's part of the reason why they're kind of leaving it open. Do you think it's going to be the same for DeMar as well? Because obviously he's due for a contract extension. There's no deadline like it is for Pat, but similar situation. Do you think they kind of hold out and see how the season progresses and give them the flexibility for it?
I think they're holding out on everybody.
Yeah.
You know, they're holding out on everybody to see, and the contracts that they signed, that they did sign, the players too. Some of them are trade friendly contracts. I think they put themselves in position to keep these guys or move them along if
Yeah.
things don't go the way that they expect them to go. And they giving all these guys 1 year's notice. I mean, they said so at the beginning of the season, and
Right.
I agree with them because you have 7 players, I believe, that have been on this team for 4 years together or more.
Right.
And now you get your 4th year, your 5th year, you pretty much know what you have.
I did want to talk about the preseason a bit as well. You were saying you just wrapped up your preseason show. Even though it is the preseason, it still does give us an indication of how the team is planning and running the offense. How they're showing up as a collective unit. And while I was encouraged by some of the things that we saw on offense, things the front office and coaching staff emphasized in training camp, they were going to prioritize moving the ball more quickly in transition, pushing the pace, ball movement, not only in transition, but also in the half court. We saw some of that, right? Like the offense as a whole seems more organized and calculated. The problem,
Right.
though, which you kind of talked about, they're still not taking enough threes. They're still not getting the foul line. And more importantly, guys aren't knocking down the shots. I'm looking at the numbers here. Bulls were 21st on offense in the preseason, 22nd on defense, last in terms of overall free throw rate, and we're still in the bottom 5 in 3-point volume. Again, it's preseason. Starters aren't getting the kind of minutes they normally would, but
Yeah.
still not very good. Are you
Yeah.
concerned
Yeah.
at all by what you saw in the preseason?
No, not really. I mean, because it's just what was 5 games,
Right.
and 1-4. The numbers can be skewed a bit because the starters don't play starter minutes in preseason. You're taking a look at different guys, you're taking a look at different combinations. So the numbers are skewed, but I bet come Wednesday that they get up at least 30 or more threes. I
Okay.
mean, and I bet that they play faster. I mean, that has been the common theme from the front office, from the coaches, from the players on down. Throughout this whole preseason. So, let's see what happens. I think one of the keys is also the health of the Bulls. As we know, we've been ravaged by injuries ever since Derrick Rose. And there was, somehow the Bulls have been cursed with the injury bug.
Right.
But I am glad to see that Zach is not having to rehab anything at the beginning of the season.
Mm-hmm.
I'm happy to see that DeMar is healthy. So everybody's pretty much healthy. If we can stay healthy, I mean, that's gonna put. I think that equals 4 or 5 more victories for us.
Mm-hmm.
Which means it moves us up a seed. So we have to stay healthy, and I think that's one of the pluses that not very many people are talking about. Yeah, we have to stay consistent. Yeah, we got to take more 3-point shots. Yeah, we got to make more threes. Yes, we have to play faster, but I think that the number one thing is to stay healthy.
Yeah. Well, the other thing you were mentioning is that I think a lot of people are forgetting about as frustrating as last season was, the Bulls lost a lot of close games, right? So
They
it's like if
did.
they can just move, if they can somehow turn some of those into wins, which hopefully you would think some additional 3-point shooting would help. That's the difference maker. I mean, that could be a difference maker, right? It's like you talk even just 4 or 5, 6 more wins. That gets them into the playoffs compared to where they were last year. I think a lot
Yeah,
of people are forgetting that as well.
yeah.
Um,
Sub 500 teams too.
what's
We lost.
that?
We lost to a lot of sub
Yep.
500 teams.
Yep.
close games, and then we would go and we would beat the Milwaukee Bucks.
Right.
You know,
Which was the opposite from the previous season, right? Where they couldn't
yeah,
beat
and
the
the
good
Boston
teams.
Celtics, yeah, we go beat those guys. I mean, go figure, man.
Kendall, at what point we were talking about this potentially, being the last year for these guys to really prove that this core can stay together? At what point do you think the front office would need to throw in the towel and basically blow this thing up? Should it get to that point? I'm not saying that it will. Like, if there are a few games below 500 and say mid-November, do you wait all the way into the trade deadline, or maybe they go through the whole season, wait to the off season to see how everything shakes out? At
I
what
think you go.
point do you think they need to call it quits?
Yeah, I think you go through the whole season, see
Okay.
where you land in the playoffs, because look, some teams get off to a rough start,
Right.
and then come back strong. So I'm not a believer in throwing in the towel right away. I like making my moves at the end. If I'm a GM, I make my moves during the summertime before the season,
Right.
unless it's absolutely necessary that I make a move, that I have to replace a coach, that I have to trade a player. I don't like doing that.
In your view, I know it's kind of hard to choose one thing. What's the biggest thing or the skill or the area this team needs to improve upon the most in order for them to really turn things around?
Letting everybody know their role. When I played for the Charlotte Hornets, Alan Bristow went down the line, and he established a pecking order. Larry Johnson is our number one option.
Mm.
Lonzo Mourning is our second option. Kendall Gill is our third option. Rest of you guys got to fend for yourselves, basically. But he established that, and I think that you have to establish the roles. You're our 3-point specialist. Vooch, no more 8 3-pointers a game. We need you down in the post. Okay? We can handle this. I don't mind if Vooch shoots 2 or 3 3-pointers a game. But when
Right.
you start getting into the 5, 6, 7, 8 range for your center, when those shots should be coming in the paint, I think that hurts the team. And even though the Bulls are trying to shoot more 3-point shots and more, get more attempts up and make more and play faster, you still need a well-rounded arsenal. You look at Jokic, he goes in the post. Sometimes he'll step out to the 3. Sometimes he'll step mid-range. Vooch is an all-star when he stays in the paint.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
He's an all-star, okay? So that's where I think Coby White is going to come in to tell him, hey, listen, Vooch, no more 3-point shots. Get in the post. I'm going to give you the ball. And that's where the maturity or the maturation of Coby White is going to have to come into play, because, eventually you're going to want to get out there and shoot, that many threes. But you got to say, hold on, big fella. No, get back in. I played with some great point guards, so I know how they do it. I know how they do it. Muggsy Bogues, Rod Strickland, Gary Payton, Stephon Marbury, all those guys. I know what they would do in those situations. Steve Barger,
Right.
my running mate at Illinois. You need a point guard to control the flow of the game, tell guys to get off the ball if they need to get off the ball.
And do you think some of that also resides in the coaching staff? Like you were saying, when you were in the league and the coach was like, hey, you're the first option, the second option. I mean, does Billy Donovan need to be more assertive in doing that?
Yeah.
Or maybe he is. I mean, I don't know, but
he might be.
Right.
We're not there, so I mean, he might be, but still, the coach can only do so much.
Yeah.
Within the flow of the game, yeah, he can call plays and everything, but it's that quarterback that you got running your team that's really the guy that can make everybody do what they're supposed to do.
Kendall, I'll get you out of here on this one because I want to be respectful of your time. We're recording this, by the way, late Monday evening.
Yeah.
Kendall was respectful of joy. But how many wins you got for the Bulls this season? And not just the wins for the regular season. If they're playoff bound, how far do you see them getting?
I have 46 wins, and I have them getting to the second round.
Okay.
Yeah.
Go ahead. What was that? Sorry.
I said I'm an eternal optimist.
I like it because I'm an eternal optimist as well. I don't have them getting to the second round, but the thing is about the playoffs, it's all matchups, right? So it's like depending on who they face, they could very well get there. I fear, because I'm like you, I kind of have them in that sort of 6, 7, 8 range.
Mm-hmm.
And then I'm looking at, the top 3 seeds, Celtics, Bucks. I think those are going to be extremely challenging for the Bulls. But if they were to get the 6th seed, I don't know, they go against like say the Cavs. If they're third, I think they could match up pretty well against the Cavs. Maybe the
Yeah.
Sixers, depending on how they do. So, yeah, I mean, I think that it's possible. It's really going to be a matter of how bad this team is going to want it. I think that's been my biggest gripe with this
Yeah.
crew is it's the mental toughness, right? It's like
Yeah.
sometimes they just don't seem like they have it in them every night. Sometimes they do, but it's like I
Right.
want to see that every game, that they really mean, what they say, that they want to win. There's that hunger and that determination there. That's really what I want to see the most.
Yeah, I agree with you. And the Bulls have a lot of nice guys. I think that's
Right.
why they went out and got Torrey Craig.
Right.
Because Torrey Craig, I think he wants all the smoke, as young people say.
Right.
But hopefully that changes. I think that Coby White is coming out of that shell where he's talking and not afraid to say anything to people and things like that. But all that comes with time, and hopefully this is Coby White's time. He knows Lonzo is not going to be back at least until next season. Hopefully he will be. But Coby can seal the deal if he plays great this season at that point guard position.
Absolutely. You were talking about, guys that will get in players, ears. Javon Carter too, I think, as well. And
Yeah,
there's also
Devon
something
Carter
to be
too.
said
Yeah,
about a
yeah,
Chicago native
yeah,
too, right? When they put on
yeah.
that Bulls uniform, you know well, it means a little bit more when you're from the area. So that's why I'm
That's
hoping
perfect.
from Javon Carter too.
Yeah.
But Kendall, again, I cannot thank you enough for taking the time out of your day to meet with me, as well as all of us Bulls fans who are tuning in. I think I speak for everyone in Bulls Nation. We appreciate how candid and transparent you and Will and Jason are in covering this team in your pre and
Thank
post game
you.
shows. So keep up the great work. We'll be watching along the way, and best of luck this season.
Okay, thanks a lot. Thanks for having me.
Of course, appreciate it.
All right, my man.